Welcome to the Ubuntu 2024 podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Scott-Jones, a rural GP based in New Zealand. The word Ubuntu comes from the Zulu and Xhosa languages and can be roughly translated as meaning as humanity towards others, the belief in a universal bond of sharing that connects all humanity. I am because you are. Ubuntu 2024 is an in-person and online conference jointly held by the Network Towards Unity for Health, TUFH, and Rural WONCA, the World Organization of Family Doctors Working Party on Rural Practice. Ubuntu 2024 will be the 45th anniversary of the Network Towards Unity for Health and bring the TUFH annual conference together with the 20th WONCA World Rural Health Conference. It's going to be quite exciting. It'll be hosted by 5 partners: the University of Western Cape, University of Cape Town, Stellenbosch University, Cape Peninsula University of Technology, and the Western Cape Government Department of Health and Wellness. So in September 2024, Cape Town, South Africa, will see Ubuntu 2024 bring together health professionals, educators, and thought leaders from across the globe to explore the theme of people, place, and policy for community wellness. And today I'm talking to Malin Fors, who is an associate professor in Norwegian University, and has all I know about you, Malin, is that you've written this fantastic paper about geographical narcissism, which really resonated not just with me, but across the sort of rural, the rural medical communities. We were all really, really interested in that concept of geographical narcissism. I think it's I may be understanding it quite superficially, but it's something that we experience all of the time in the work that we have. But hopefully this is going to be an opportunity for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and about the work that you do. I know that you are involved in teaching and teach particularly about the issues of power to students in the university that you work in, as I understand it. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Malin.
Thank you for having me here. I'm so much looking forward to Ubuntu 2024. So my background is I'm a clinical psychologist, and I moved from urban Sweden to Arctic Norway, and it's a small rural community. And I met here with a wonderful nature, weather-beaten people, and my own geographical narcissism, because I soon recognized that everything I learned in the university didn't really fit the map. So I've been like digging in other questions about power in psychotherapy, about the medical record, how issues of race, class, sexuality, ability, age is entering the psychotherapy boom in different ways. And then it occurred to me that maybe place or ruralness or urbanness, or the tension, is also a question of power that's not really formulated, because rural issues are often formulated in ways that is mostly describing like rural deficits or rural misery or what should be done to like meet urban standards, but not really in the way of power and oppression. So meeting myself, moving here and seeing the limits of my own teaching, I started to formulate ways to see this. So I work most clinically. I work at the psychiatric outpatient unit, and I work in private practice. And I also work for UiT, the Arctic University of Norway, where I teach medical students about culture safety.
What is it that's sort of driven you into this work? What in your background do you think has led you down this road?
That's a very good question. I think I'm lesbian, and I think that during my education, I really felt that most of mainstream psychology were really describing heterosexual development, and that psychology is not only a field, it's also a field of power, because it's defining what's normal. So during history, psychology, and also psychiatry has done a lot of harm to minorities. So I think I'd be like sensitive to that kind of way that normative issues are formulated, like who is normal and who's not, like who is defined out or labeled as not counting. Right. So I think that led me into all the literature about power and about post-colonialism and about oppression and discrimination. So I think this is something that's resonated deeply inside of me because of personal experiences, of course.
It's fascinating. I, as a first generation New Zealander, I moved from the UK and found myself in a small rural community on the northern island of New Zealand, where over 50% of my practice population are Māori. I have over the last 30 years, slowly, very, very slowly, had a number of scales fall off my mind, and I found myself taking a cultural journey, I think, of understanding, not really, I don't think, of the people and the community, but of myself, as I've it's been a continuing journey of discovery and repeated falters and missteps, and the need for a great deal of well, it's not quite a few numbers of apologies on my part for the mistakes and the steps that I've taken, but and I'm sure that that's the same for many rural communities around the world. The clinicians that are working in those have come from outside of those communities. It's unusual for us to have, and we know that people who come from rural communities tend to stay in rural communities. There are a number of efforts being made to educate people in the communities that they come from and maintain that connection throughout their undergraduate and postgraduate years, because of retention and recruitment. But it's also because being part of the community, you understand the community, and that the danger of that power differential isn't quite as present, perhaps, as it is when a complete stranger comes in with all of their baggage and their misunderstandings that they bring in as well. So yeah, it must be a really challenging work to do. Does anything that I've said, am I completely off piste, or am I I'm now seeking some counseling, I suppose, Malin?
I think we're like sharing the same experience, and I think this concept of geographical narcissism is echoing around the world because it makes sense to so many people. It's something that's not located in the Arctic or in Hammerfest or in my context. It's something that is universal because it's echoing an experience of devaluation and of oppression, and also being misunderstood and exploited sometimes. I think it's so hard to know when people are coming on short contracts. Are they really heroes coming to help out, or it's also dependence in a way that's not always good? And sometimes urban people tend to send us their leftovers, like people who can't get a job anywhere else coming to rural areas. And it's also an exploitative nuances of that sometimes. No one stays, no one is accountable, and it's like a place that's far away that's not really counting. And sometimes people also come to urbansplain, like to tell us everything they think we don't know. So I think that's something we're sharing, like in different shades. But I think the thing that you're pointing to is like how you learned culture coming there. And I think this that is a very good point, because sometimes we talk about culture competency in a way that's quite black and white, like or culture sensitivity, that is shaming people. Like either you are a racist or you're not a racist.
Yes.
And often other people are racist, and we ourselves are kind of innocent and have all these insights. And I think that's quite dangerous. I think we're all racist. It's hard to live in this world, not to have like internalized some of the social hierarchy, like unconsciously. So it just comes in different shades, and if we're like less shameful of exploring it, I think we're also less defensive, and then we can do something about it. That's why I'm talking about my own geographical narcissism, because it's dangerous only to point at the urban people's blind spots when they oppress us. It's like, yeah, I was blind too, in this sense. Like I remember one of the first experiences that I view so many people as immature because they didn't move away from home. Like in the urban textbook is a part of maturity and like developmental psychology to be able to be an own individual, like to depart and not stay at home. That's quite immature. But then if that's true, all Arctic people, a lot of them would be like personality disordered, and that doesn't make sense. So maybe my education was the error.
Yeah, yeah. We try and address some of the power differential through structural things like rural proofing is the concept that I'm sure you're aware of, where we try and embed within policy development a requirement for the needs of rural communities to be taken into account, and for the to try and help to avoid the urban power differential, to embed within the structure that they have to consult meaningfully with rural people in a way that that addresses the tyranny of distance, and to take into account what they hear. I must say it doesn't work terribly well. Certainly not in New Zealand. I'm listening to people from around the world. I'm not sure that it works very well anywhere. But is that part of the solution, the sort of the structural in terms of the power differential between the urban and rural centers, setting up structures like this, embedded rural proofing within policy?
Well, I think that rural proofing is like a good attempt, but I think it's still like harm reduction, because it kind of assumes that all good ideas is coming from urban centers, and then you have to prove it for rural realities. So it's not really progressive in that sense, because it doesn't pick up all the bright ideas from rural areas and all the strengths and all the. And I think there are a lot of examples of that, how rural environment is taking the lead. Like we were first with telemedicine, ultrasound, team training for emergency. So it's a lot of prejudice embedded in the idea of rural proofing, because it kind of assumes that the rural world is not better, and sometimes we are really better. And I think that you have to invest in rural areas on rural premises, and you have to invite rural clinicians to the policy-making process, not like when you're just proving what you decided. We have to take part in the table when the discussion is made in the first round. I think that's a clue in a way.
We often reflect that because of the pressures of workforce and workload, that and the opportunities of working in small communities where people know each other and work together in an integrated way, that we see innovation happening in rural communities first, and then gradually it will spread to the urban community. Certainly that's our experience in New Zealand and many of the countries around the world. But it has to happen almost under the radar, and often just on the edges of regulation, I'd have to say, in many rural communities, as we we encourage non-regulated health professionals to take greater levels of responsibility because they have to, because of the workload, as an example. And then eventually this becomes common practice, and then it becomes socialized into the urban centers, and then it becomes an established practice. But it's a long road. We have standing orders in New Zealand where nurses are allowed to we're allowed to dispense medications, and that arose in exactly that way over a period of about 10 years. And now we have legislation which allows for standing orders to be in place, and it's been a great stepping stone for nurse prescribing and much greater roles for nurses in our communities. So yeah, but no, I think you're absolutely right. I hadn't thought about that idea of rural proofing being actually it's establishing that power differential, because they have to take us into account, but it's their ideas. Yeah. So tell me about.
But it's still better.
Sorry?
I'm sorry. I think it's still better than nothing. So
yes.
It's driving political ideas. You have to be pragmatic sometimes too. So it's the first step, but it's not the goal.
So tell me about Ubuntu 2024, and I know that you're one of the keynote speakers. Apart from hearing from you, being challenged by you, and having our ideas expanded by learning more from the work that you've done, what else are you doing with Ubuntu 2024? Are there other aspects of attending the conference that you're looking forward to?
I'm so much looking forward to meeting colleagues from different parts of the world and discuss what kind of ideas resonates to them and what they are occupied with right now, and to share the joy. I think it's always so vibrating to me. That I just love conferences. So I really looking forward to meet colleagues, and I think that's really even more appreciated when you live very remote and isolated. When you have the opportunity to meet like-minded people with the same kind of experiences, that's a treasure. I think we value that more sometimes because we have to travel to meet people.
Yeah.
I'm really thrilled and excited.
I am too. It's going to be. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to Cape Town as well. Do you think you'll have much of a chance to explore?
Well, I hope we'll staying there a few days extra. I have some research collaborations going on too. That's just emerging. So we're doing a study on geographical narcissism. So I'm taking the time to meet some colleagues too that are in the same research field.
And things that are not work related, Malin? Are you going to have are you going to go and see the great white sharks, or?
Yeah, of course.
Get to the top of
That's
Cape
right.
Mountain?
Yeah, I think you cannot go there without being a tourist too, of course. Yeah. That goes without saying.
It's certainly so. One of the joys of these world conferences are, as you say, for me, meeting with colleagues from across the globe who are like-minded and but come from completely different contexts, and we learn so much about what's common between us, as well as learning from the differences. And I've certainly had a lot of personal and professional support from colleagues that I've met through the conferences. So I'm really looking forward to that. So apart any other reasons why people should come to Ubuntu 2024, Malin?
I think that all the reasons are there. Just come and meet your colleagues and colleagues you didn't know you have, and come and co-think about geographical narcissism and how to make resistance and progress, and how understand how the issues about rural and urban is fitting into a power theme, and how we can fight that together. And I think that South Africa is a very good country in doing this. I mean, there's so many intersections and so much experience about sad histories about oppression and race. And I think it's also like an elephant in the room, like me as a white person talking about power and privilege and oppression in South Africa. So I think the intersections with other kind of social political issues also need to be addressed, and how to understand rural issues in terms of also poverty and social issues and race and indigenous issues. I think all these are overlapping in a way, but I think that rural issues is also something by itself, but sometimes it's even, the gravitation is even stronger when you add race or ethnicity or indigenous experiences, as you were talking about too. So I think this will be both experience for the soul, for the heart, and for the brain.
Oh, perfect. The soul, the heart, and the brain at Ubuntu 2024. We look forward to seeing you there. To find out more, visit the website ubuntu2024.com. And thank you, Malin. That was absolutely fantastic. And I really, really look forward to seeing you in Cape Town. Ka kite anō.
Goodbye. Thank you.